What's up, guys? My name is Matt from Magic the Greatening, and today I'm going to be showing you the weirdest and jankiest deck I've ever made. This is Esper Deal with the Devil. Originally, I named this deck Esper Axis of Mortality, but after playing with this deck quite extensively and winning and losing games in ways I've never won or lost before, the title Deal with the Devil was far more fitting. The entire point of this deck is to play with you and your opponent's life total, whether that means you're gaining life, losing life, or exchanging life. Before I show you guys this deck, make sure to head over to flipsidegaming.com to buy your Magic singles. You're going to be buying Magic singles regardless, so if you want to help me or my channel out, make sure to buy your cards at flipsidegaming.com and use promo code GREAT to get 10% off on any purchases over $10. You're getting cards, saving money, and supporting me all at the same time. Alright, let's get into it. Let's first start off by showing what the deck is built around. We're going to be playing 3 copies of Axis of Mortality. Yes, I was stupid enough to build an entire standard deck around a card that should be only played in Commander. However, this card is really fun and has a ton of hidden value. It can essentially mean your opponent has to deal a whole bunch of burst damage to you and kill you in a single turn. Otherwise, you just flip the life totals and put them on the back foot. Its main purpose is to let us use spells that lower our life total, knowing we could just reset our life. This opens up a possibility of spells and creatures that would be considered otherwise unplayable. I do need to point out, though, when you switch life totals with someone, you're technically losing or gaining life. For example, if you're at 1 life and your opponent's at 20 and you switch life totals, you are technically gaining 19 life and your opponent is losing 19 life. So just keep that in mind when I'm going over the rest of the deck. The reason it was important for me to point out that ruling was because of the creatures we were playing in this deck. We were playing 2 copies of Crested Sunmare, 3 copies of Direfleet Ravager, and 2 copies of Vona, Butcher of Magan. In all honesty, I would play 3 or maybe 4 copies of Crested Sunmare if the card wasn't so expensive. In fact, our creatures here literally make up 75% of the deck's cost, but for good reason. Sunmare turns our life gain into a board of 5/5s that is hard for a deck to deal with that's not running Hour of Devastation. Ravager withers everyone's life total down while putting a 4/4 Menace Death Touch out, which is both a good blocker and attacker. And finally, Vona is an excellent card to toy with our life total, because he himself has lifelink, but you can also pay 7 life to blow up a non-land permanent. Now, I can understand some people's concerns with playing this many 5-mana creatures. We are playing no other 5-mana spells in both main board or sideboard, and the rest of the deck has been built to complement our creatures here. Let's start going over the rest of the deck now. Starting at the bottom of the curve, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Argyll's Bloodfast, 3 copies of Essence Scatter, and 3 copies of Negate. Essence Scatter and Negate are the only real blue cards in the main board, which might make you question putting blue in this deck at all. However, when you're playing with life this greedily, it's best to consider runner counter spells in cases of emergencies. As for Argyll's Bloodfast, I was really excited to play this card in this deck, and boy does this card fit in here. The front side of the card is perfect for what we are trying to do. For 2 mana, we can lose 2 life and draw a card. And it's not like this is once per turn. This is repeatable. All our leftover mana turns into cards, and a lot of them. And the downside of this card doesn't even really hurt us that much. We want to lose life, so we could just do the old switcheroo of our life totals. However, when this transforms, it turns into Temple of Aclazotz, a legendary land that can tap for mana, or tap to sacrifice one of our creatures and gain life equal to that creature's toughness. While this is actually the weaker side of the card for us, it does provide extra mana sources for us, which can be important for a deck that runs some pretty costly spells. Since we are really relying on controlling the board while we fiddle with life totals, we probably should play some removal and card draw. We're going to be playing 4 copies of Desert's Hold, 4 copies of Painful Lessons, and 3 copies of Rags to Riches. Desert's Hold is actually really strong and reliable removal. Yeah, it's a pacifism that gains us life if we control a desert, which we're playing a bunch of deserts, by the way, but it also shuts down any activated abilities. Most of the time, that doesn't really mean much, except when it comes to the Scarab God. You may or may not see the Scarab God at like your local game store with a play session with your friends at the kitchen counter, because the Scarab God is about $40 a copy right now, but being able to permanently stop a Scarab God with Desert's Hold is really, really funny. Now, Painful Lessons is our card draw in the deck outside of Arguel's Bloodfast. If a sorcery speed card draw spell that loses us even more life is a problem for you, Hieroglyphic Illumination or Glimmer of Genius are a nice substitute. And Rags to Riches is a cheap sweeper that has even more value late in the game thanks to its Aftermath card. Again, playing Yahenni's Expertise here or Bontu's Last Reckoning are fine replacements. And what would make this janky deck even more janky if we weren't playing Curses? We're playing 4 copies of Torment of Scarabs and 1 copy of Cruel Reality. Torment turns into an awful situation for our opponent when we swap our low life total with them. It forces our opponent to either sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card every turn, or they die. Cruel Reality is just a much more amplified version of that, and where your opponent is stuck with either sacrificing a permanent or losing 5 life. Our land base is kind of complex while also staying budget. We're playing 4 copies of Forsaken Sanctuary, 4 copies of Ifnir Deadlands, 1 copy of Ipnu Rivulet, 2 copies of Meandering River, 1 copy of Shefet Dunes, 2 copies of Submerged Boneyard, 3 Island, 3 Plains, and 5 Swamps. The reason for all these pain deserts is to A, lose life whenever we want to, and B, make Desert's Hold gain us life whenever we play it. Time for the sideboard. We're playing 3 copies of Crook of Condemnation for Graveyard Hate, 2 copies of Duress against our control matchups, 2 copies of Oketra's Last Mercy against aggro, burn, and other mid-range decks, 4 copies of Supreme Will for control matchups, and 4 copies of Walk the Plank for even more removal. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to vote for next video's deck tech top right corner. 2 choices, Green Red Stompy and Teamer Prowess. Also, don't take this deck too seriously. Obviously, it's not going to be as good as Teamer Energy. Obviously, it's going to lose to Raminop Red every single time. You know, it's going to lose to those top tier decks 95% of the time. So don't take the deck too seriously. It's kind of like my Hazoret's Undying Fury deck. I just wanted to make the deck because I could. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.